Thank you. Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet. In addition to the Cabinet members and other councillors present in the room, we also have some councillors joining our meeting today remotely. I will now check that they can hear us, and we have Councillor Crockett.
Yes, Leader, thank you very much. I can hear and see you.
Councillor Tyler.
Yes, Leader, good afternoon. I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Councillor Harrington.
Yes, Leader, I can hear and see you. Thank you.
Thank you. We have group leaders present. Councillor Terry James.
Yes, good afternoon, and I can hear and see you. By the way, Councillor Matthews sends his apologies.
Thank you. Councillor Lester.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Fagan.
Afternoon, Leader. I can see and hear you. Thank you. I'm afraid I may have to leave slightly early due to an LGA training event.
Thank you for letting us know. Councillor Peter Jimman.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon, Leader. I am experiencing a little bit of problems with internet coming and going, so I am here at the moment, but who knows? I will try to stay with you.
And the Scrutiny Committee Chair is Councillor Philip Howells. See on my screen. Okay, and Councillor Lisa Swinglehurst, who I can see.
Yeah, good afternoon, Leader, and I can hear and see you. Thank you.
Thank you. So when it comes to asking group leaders to speak, I'll start off with Councillor James, then go to Councillor Lester, Councillor Fagan, and Councillor Jinman. Thank you. I will now formally open the meeting. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and making a recording. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you're not speaking, and please ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record our public meetings, provided it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. As we move through the agenda, in addition to discussion by Cabinet members, I will invite group leaders or their representatives in turn to provide views and questions from their group on each item. Where appropriate, I will also call on scrutiny chairpersons to comment on behalf of their committee. Voting may be undertaken by a show of hands in the room, and only Cabinet members physically present in the room may vote. In terms of today's agenda, please note that item 8 will not be considered by Cabinet today. This is a result of the forthcoming by-election in Bromyard on the 10th of March. The Market Towns Investment Plan Report will be considered by Cabinet at its meeting on the 24th of March, which will be after the date of that election. I'd like to also welcome Ross Cook to his first meeting today of Cabinet. A fascinating job to do for us. We look forward to your contributions. I was coming into the council office this morning, listening to the news from the Ukraine, reflecting on the statements being made nationally and wondering what response was appropriate from us in the council. Herefordshire may be considered a bit of a backwater, but for many years we have relied upon workers from Eastern Europe, Ukraine included, to work here. Some have stayed and are bringing up families. Many of us travel internationally and might have been to the Ukraine. We also have a strong global presence in the security industry, and there are workers from Herefordshire in the UK providing services. We might be considered a bit of a backwater, but actually we do have real connections. Given the seriousness of war breaking out in Europe today for the first time in over 80 years, it is appropriate for me, on behalf of the council, to send a message of solidarity and sympathy to all democratically elected representatives of the government and of councils across Ukraine, and to the people of Ukraine whom they all serve and represent. The fabric and freedom of their society is under threat, and our support, thoughts and prayers are with them all at this difficult and distressing time. Our thoughts are also with the many residents of our own county who have friends and family in the region. On behalf of the council, I want to reach out to Ukrainians living in our county If we have anything to support you, please let us know. I now move to the rest of the business on the agenda. First of all, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Davis and Councillor Matthews. I don't believe there are any others. Jen, that's fine. Declarations of interest, are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interests for items on the agenda today? For item 11, registered services transferred to Hoople Limited, both myself and Andrew Lovegrove will leave the meeting for this agenda item as we are both directors of Hoople. Are there any other declarations of interest? See none. Item 3, to approve and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 31st of January 2022. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. Cabinet members, are you content that the minutes are an accurate record? If you would show a hand, thank you. All in favour, thank you. Then item 4 is to receive any questions from members of the public. We have received one question from a member of the public for this meeting, and a response has been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. The supplementary question refers to the Market Town investment plans, which, as mentioned earlier, will be deferred to a meeting on the 24th of March. Item 5 is to receive questions from councillors. We have received 3 questions from councillors for this meeting, and a response has been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. Those councillors who have submitted questions have the opportunity to submit a written supplementary or to join the meeting to ask their question live. I will now ask the clerk to confirm if a supplemental question is to be asked for each of the questions. The first questioner was Councillor Milne. Do we have a supplemental question from Councillor Milne?
No, we don't, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Watson, do we have a supplemental question?
No, we do not.
Not from right. We do have a supplemental question from Councillor Shaw. Sarah, do you want to read that out?
Yes. Councillor Shaw's supplementary question reads as follows. You state that the council does not currently hold any liabilities in respect of under occupancy, but does not state whether there are any circumstances which might give rise to a liability being crystallised. Would this potential contained within a schedule of underwritten soft loans and potential liabilities, and where can a member or the external auditor inspect this schedule?
That question is directed to Councillor Davis, who has sent apologies for this meeting. So can I suggest that we provide a written response to Councillor Shaw after this meeting? On then to the first substantial item on the agenda, item 6, which is Q3 budget and performance report. The intention of this is to review performance for Q3 and the forecast budget outturn for the year. This item begins on page 19 of the agenda pack. I'll ask Councillor Harvey to provide an introduction. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Colleagues, I present the Q3 forecast outturn for the council alongside the accompanying performance report. After a Q2 report, which showed signs of financial improvement over the summer as aspects of COVID lockdown eased, this report shows just how quickly the autumn wave of Omicron infection and the consequent winter lockdown flowed through in its effects to our services. Whilst strong demand management, government support grants and the impact of lockdown on access to services and the filling of staff vacancies has continued to show as an underspend against the budget for our Adult Social Care Directorate, increased risks for children and families through COVID, cost of residential placements, increased legal support and transformation costs in the Children's Directorate, and also loss of income in planning and car parking, and for our other service areas in the Economy and Environment Directorate have resulted in a shift from the Q2 forecast from a small underspend to the Q3 position you see detailed in the report, where there is an overspend of close to £900,000 being forecast. At Q3, nearly 75% of the savings approved in this year's budget, which I can remind everybody were over £11.5 million, have been achieved, which shows a slight improvement over the Q2 position, which is a strong performance, I think, given the circumstances over the last quarter. As was highlighted to Council in the recent budget debate, some of the savings for this year will run on into 2022-23 and have been accounted for in the budget for the coming year. Across our delivery themes of economy, community and environment, 62% of our activities for this year are either delivered or on track, with only 5% being forecast as compromised. Given the continuing challenges of COVID and the unprecedented savings programme, this is a strong position to be in at Q3. And I'd like to pay tribute to staff across the Council for their hard work in difficult and at times very fluid circumstances. Officers and Cabinet are working hard with staff and partners to improve the actual outturn position by the end of March. And I'm grateful for the continued efforts of all concerned to identify savings and efficiencies, even at this late stage in the delivery year.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. We've got a lot of items on the agenda this afternoon, so I'm going to try to move through fairly swiftly, although this being a finance issue, I think it's very important that any group leaders have a full opportunity to ask questions and make statements. I don't think we have any questions from Cabinet members, so I think if I may, I'll move straight to the group leaders, starting with Councillor James.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. I'll be very brief. Bearing in mind the current international situation, the challenges that lay behind us are nothing as compared to the potential challenges that lie ahead of us. And I think our minds need to focus on what lies ahead. I'll just ask one question, probably of the financial officer. In the Treasury statement, if from my memory, I haven't got it in front of me now, we have a number of monies deposited in banks. I believe one is Northern Rock and I believe the other is Deutsche Bank, receiving nil interest. Is that because subsequent to the deposit of those monies, the rate of interest was reduced? Otherwise, I don't know why we deposit.
Mr. Lovegrove, would you like to answer that?
Chairman, thank you very much for the question. We do put money into the various deposit accounts, and some of those are offering very low levels of interest. So, as you mentioned, the Deutsche Bank, at that point, at the end of December, we were receiving no interest on that. It was a very short-term overnight position of putting, we have to invest our money somewhere overnight. So at that point, at the end of December, right, we were receiving no interest in those accounts. The Treasury Management Strategy is very clear. We only put the Council's money in banks that have a strong credit rating, and we're at the behest of the rates that are offered by the market. I can say that because of recent events since December, the rates we're now earning on our spare cash have increased, and that's partly what the market's priced in, anticipated future rate rises. But Council is correct, at that point, at the end of December, one of the very small deposits we had was receiving no interest, but better to put it in a state secure bank.
Thank you, Mr. Lovegrove, and I think, Councillor James, you're quite right that events do tend to put this into perspective. Over to you, Councillor Lester.
Thank you. And just very briefly, I'd like to thank the Leader of the Council for making those comments about the Ukraine. Obviously, it's a deeply distressing time for Ukrainians and for the international situation. It seems to me to be an unprovoked attack, and our hearts go out to all those people who must feel very threatened at this challenging time. And it does really put our dilemmas and discussions into perspective, but we must crack on anyway, regardless. So we will ask our questions, but thank you to the Leader of the Council for his comments, and I share his concerns and thoughts. With regard to the quarterly performance, I declare a vested interest because I have communities who are chomping at the bit to spend their 106 monies. And I have had some encouraging news that the matter is moving forward, but it does say in paragraph 21 that it's subject to a further decision. The only point I would make to Councillor Harvey is please, 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 can that decision be made as soon as possible so that we can get things moving forward. We note on paragraph 34 that the Green Homes grant, a lot of that money's had to be returned, and we understand that there were logistical reasons why that had to be returned, some of that. But can we just have a clarification of how much of it we're talking about and what steps we can take to ensure that we get that funding back at another tranche, another opportunity? And so there's a question there. The two more questions really. We note in the capital outturn that there are quite a few projects that have been designated to start, but it seems that less monies have been spent on them. So that, you know, we've got this concern about the deliverability of these key projects. So we wonder, is that a measure of the difficulty of the projects themselves, or is it because there's an issue with project management of those projects? And the last point we'd just like to clarify is on the wetlands integrated programme, it shows a total capital of 2 million, but if we're right, there was an extra £1 million that was given to that project. So surely that figure should read 3 million, but clarification on that point would be appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Well, I think the Green Homes grant, I've not got the figures in front of me in terms of quite how much was needed to be returned. I think maybe Councillor Chowns has got the detail on that one. I'll hand over.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond on the Green Home grant. I haven't got the numbers to hand. Perhaps Mr. Lovegrove does, or else we can give you a written response, Councillor Lester. But yes, it's extremely disappointing that we had to return part of the Green Homes grant funds back to government. We weren't by any means the only authority that had to do that. It was a combination of essentially two factors. One was the skills and the supply chain for workers able to do the type of insulation and retrofit work that was required under the scheme. And the second was identifying households that met the really quite stringent requirements of that scheme. Those two factors, coupled with very hard deadlines for spending, i.e. we get funds and we have to spend it within less than a financial year, were very problematic. We have, however, now got some of that funding back through the third tranche of the Green Homes grant funding. And for that tranche, we have secured the services of a different contractor to do the works, basically. And I have absolutely been asking those questions for assurance in terms of their capacity to deliver the works that are required. The bigger picture is that this sector is a sector that requires further investment to develop those skills and that supply chain essentially to do this work. We've got 85,000 homes in Herefordshire, of which 60% require really substantial work to bring them up even to, you know, the fairly basic standards, EPC-C standard. This is a major opportunity for our local economy and for the national economy as well. And that is why we've commissioned a retrofit strategy for Herefordshire to identify what the council can do to support development of that sector and move beyond what we have at the moment, which is very short-term funding streams, you know, typically less than 12-month expenditure timeframes from central government for installation work for a very limited proportion of the houses that need it. We need to develop the supply chain, the skills to do that work, and the demand mechanisms and the funding mechanisms to facilitate that much more broadly. So I hope that's answered your specific question on that and given a bit of the bigger picture as well. Thank you. I'll hand back to Councillor Harvey on the...
Yes, as far as the capital programme is concerned, are there particular programme lines that you'd like to highlight in terms of your concerns as regards deliverability versus project management? And maybe I can talk about the specifics.
Over thank you, Councillor Harvey. The care homes extra development, that's down by 669,000. The super hubs is down by 1.8 million. The strategic housing development adjustment is only forecast for 477,000, and the school capital maintenance grant is altered, so that's 1.9 million, I think. So those are key areas where there's a big variance in what was projected to be spent and what's actually being spent. So just those for an example.
Okay, well, the adjustments column is indicating the adjustments and the reprofiling to which includes reprofiling to future years, which I think took place in the autumn last year when the capital programme was reviewed and adjusted, and that was partly to reflect difficulties in delivering some of those schemes, partly because of COVID. In the case of the care homes and extra care development, I think that's moved forward into the coming financial year, and that's that funding is still there. The column to pay attention to, if you like, in terms of the reprofile programme is the final column, which is indicating variances, and those were variances against what we had in the adjusted programme for delivery this year. And for things like the strategic housing development programme, there's been a significant amount of work done in understanding, first of all, whether homes can come forward on land that the council owns, because that's going to be the cheapest and most straightforward to deliver, and that's pushed the programme a little to the right in trying to understand what the options are there, which has created an underspending year. Fastershire broadband, we've reported previously where the delays have occurred there, where contractors have gone bust, and where there's been a need to reprofile the delivery of the GigaClear project for fibre to the premises, and that's been reported in previous cabinet meetings, I believe. But that has again shifted money from this financial year into future years. What was the other one that you were highlighting?
Oh yes, thank you. Before I forget, it was BlackRock, not Northern Rock. Councillor James said about investment, but it's actually BlackRock, not Northern Rock. I'm sure he'd want me to correct him. The other point was about the wetlands, and it's showing £2 million, but I thought there was an extra £1 million that was set aside to deal with that issue. We just hope we haven't lost that extra £1 million.
I doubt it's been lost. I'll provide a written answer on that, and we'll double check where that's sitting in the numbers.
There was a question about Section 106 money as well.
Yes. Well, good news is we've got some additional support in terms of project management to deliver on that. Nobody's keener than I am, given that I've also got the planning portfolio to get the 106 money spent, but it has been a little bit more of an exercise than we expected it to be, in terms of actually making sure that the criteria under which the funding was provided by developers are actually aligning with the way that the money was had started to be spent, and projects that we inherited. So we're actually we're coming to the end, I believe, of the exercise to understand the detail of that, and hopefully we can press the go button on some of these. I believe we're going to have a brief report published, which will go to all members, which will give an indication of the sequencing of the projects being taken forward, so parishes and communities can understand what the likely timescales are within which these important and long-awaited improvements to community infrastructure are actually going to be able to be delivered. But as we said previously, we are using a framework contract to broaden the supplier base and to speed the rate at which we can deliver these beyond that which would be able to be achieved through our public realm partnership with Balfour Beatty.
Thank you. I'll move on then to Councillor Fagan.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the Green Group, I think we note the contents of this report. Also, it looks like the Green Homes Grant, certainly the return of this funding certainly shows the amount of investment that is required in the county in terms of building a retrofit infrastructure. And so we look forward to that developing in the county so that in future we can actually insulate our homes instead of returning the money, and thereby actually save residents valuable money on their heating bills. Also, communities will welcome the developments and the 106 spending, and also the coordinated approach to transport and infrastructure and housing. I think that is welcome news for everyone, and we look forward to hearing back about the bus strategy. Hopefully that will bring extra good news in terms of transport, sort of sorely needed in the county. And finally, just on the broadband, I know that communities, certainly in my ward and around the county, will be looking to see how the sort of changes within the Gloucestershire contract can actually help them to get proper access to broadband. There are several communities that are still struggling to get proper broadband access, and this is affecting their sort of work opportunities and education. So the sooner that improvements are sort of shown on this, the better for those communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fagan. Councillor Chinman.
Thank you, Leader. On behalf of the Independents for Herefordshire, may I associate myself with your comments and indeed Councillor Leicester's comments regarding the situation in Ukraine. I'm incredibly sad in this day and age that we're sitting watching what we're seeing on television, and it really is very, very sad. Moving to where we are now, I welcome in this paper various aspects of it, but one of the things that strikes me greatly is that when I looked at the Treasury report, and I was sitting yesterday having a lecture from the Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, from Sir David Ramsden, and we were talking about 7.45% as RPI, and therefore in the short term, he felt fairly confident, and he was very confident that it would go to the 5% thereafter. But it makes the point that we have to be very cautious in what we're trying to do. We have to be very careful with monies that we are given by our residents in what we're doing. We have to use it efficiently. And I'm very much aware that we had a very sensible debate about the budget. We had to put it up by a certain percentage, which was vital to do. And it shows now how sensible and prudent that was, given the sorts of issues we're now facing. So thank you. Very pleased to see the broadband aspect mentioned, because as you well know, many of those residents who have not got access are within my own ward area, and we've rather been strung on for rather too long with promises, and actually looking now as though we might get something in the interim to assist is going to be greatly received, and I sincerely hope that can happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chinman. We do have a full agenda, so I'll move on to the recommendation. So the recommendation to Cabinet members is as follows. The Cabinet members reviewed progress against, no, that's the wrong one. Sorry about That's the next one. The recommendation that Cabinet, having reviewed performance and financial forecast for the year 2021-22 as set out in the appendices A to E, has not identified any additional actions to be considered to achieve future improvements. Could I have a show of hands all in favour, please? Yes, that's passed unanimously. Pass on then to item 7. So this is the Children's Improvement Plan quarterly update, and purpose is to provide an update to Cabinet on the Children's Improvement Plan. This item begins on page 75 of the agenda pack. And if I may pass the introduction over to Councillor Toynbee, Cabinet Member, Children and Family.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, the update that Daryl's going to give us now is part of our system that we've now got in place, where we get quarterly updates to Cabinet. As you know, last year a lot of work went into stabilising the service and stabilising the workforce, and in analysing our practice and our performance. And now we're in the phase of focusing on making sure that we make the changes that we need to make. And this is naturally very deep and very demanding work. So I'm really grateful to all our staff who are sharing with us the changes that they think we need to make, and who are just keeping on every day, working with families, supporting families in a compassionate and professional way. As you all know, another strong focus at the moment is recruitment, which is a huge challenge, not just here, but everywhere, all over the country. And on top of this, as you heard this morning, Cabinet colleagues, demand is also growing in the service, so we're under more pressure. So last year, when we as a Cabinet and as full council endorsed our improvement plan, we agreed that it would be a live document, and it very much is a live document. And at the moment it's being refreshed and simplified, which I'm very pleased about. So the renewed version that Daryl and his teams are working on at the moment will be brought to us at our next Cabinet update. But I'll hand over to Daryl now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Toynbee. Thank you, Leader. I don't know that I've got much more to add than Councillor Toynbee's commented there. I'll assume the paper's read. I think the core of the paper, or this update, is that we're very much in that difficult phase now, having put a lot of time and effort last year into stabilising the service, into analysing our practice and performance in the light of the High Court judgment. We're very much now in the doing, in focusing on in making sure we've got sufficient capacity, making sure that our practice is as good as we would like and as citizens of Herefordshire would expect, and that our performance is at least as good as comparable, good and outstanding local authorities. And yeah, happy to take questions.
I don't know whether any Cabinet members wish to raise any questions. Darryl, it's interesting, I'm reading point 6, it refers to perhaps being a little bit over optimistic to get things done more quickly. I think you perhaps weren't realistic enough initially, realising the issues perhaps.
Yeah, so the original plan was written at a point when not all was known. So we were still embarking on the audits of cases and various other practice analyses. And I think we'd be the first to say that the first plan was much more activity and transaction based rather than outcomes based. So whilst we can say that a lot of the activity is progressing well and or has been completed, the impact of that activity isn't always evident yet, and will take some months to be evident, which is why we're moving to a different focus in our refreshed plan, outcomes focused, and that will mean then that we're looking at making sure that we can deliver on outcomes at a point in the future, and that then those outcomes and that practice improvement is sustainable. But I think there's clear evidence that that first plan, there was a degree of over optimism in terms of the impact of the change that was going to be required. And of course, it didn't take into account sufficiently the rise in referrals, which we've seen as a service, and that many children's services are seen across the country.
Thank you, Darryl. I'll move then to group leaders. First of all, Councillor James.
Thank you, Leader. I mean, it tells me, this particular document tells me very little other than that that the process has begun. There's a long way to go, but I still have deep, deep concerns about the actual practice on the ground within children's services. Daily I hear, well, weekly at least, I hear of cases which cause me deep, deep concern of the way in which children's services are being managed. I'll say no further than that at this stage, bearing in mind the confidentiality of such matters, but I have taken up some of the issues with staff, and I shall be taking up even more in the future.
Yes, Councillor James, it's obviously very important that you pass on that information, and I think that is an ongoing dialogue you have at the moment. So thank you for that. Councillor Lester.
Thank you. Councillor Hitchener, you asked the question I was going to ask. How is it that we were adrift and over-optimistic with the timescales? And I think it is a reality check for the council, because we involve professionals in doing these assessments, and yet still we make these overestimates, and that to me rings alarm bells really, and just goes to show A, how difficult it is, but B, how vigilant we have to be when we're making these assessments. But the main point I would make, and it's a main challenge, is that, forgive me for saying this, and the report reads a lot like the other reports that we've had, where this group is meeting with this group is reporting to that group. There are now these meetings occurring, and we have staffing issues, and these are all things that I've read before. I appreciate they're going on, and it's good that they're being highlighted and shown. But the question we really have is, in a quarterly improvement plan update, I can't see in this report whether the experience of the family and the child is improving, whether it's staying the same, or whether it's getting worse. Now, I'd love to be able to read that it's getting better because of all the things we're doing, but this report, which goes to members of the public, it's published to try and reassure members of the public that, you know, we've got a grasp on this, doesn't tell you the key things that I think it should tell us, which is we've got an improvement plan, we've got work to do, we're doing this, but this is how we're improving, or this is how we're not improving, so that we've got some indication as to how all of these changes are actually impacting on what matters, which is the child and the families. So that's the general thrust of it. And I would make the request, and believe me, I know how complicated and difficult it is, but unless we're given some steer about that particular aspect of it, that snapshot, then a lot of telling us that so-and-so's meeting so-and-so doesn't really get to the nub of what we're trying to do in terms of improvement. So I'll leave it in there, but I think you appreciate the point that's been made.
Councillor Lester, I think you make a very valid point in how do we measure that things are improving. But I think there are some movements in that direction, aren't there, Daryl? Presentation formally to Cabinet this morning was very interesting.
There are, and Councillor Lester's absolutely right. I agree with him 100%. This report was written originally to have come to Cabinet slightly earlier, and was in that transition point. So we've moved into a very different phase in terms of our performance and management information reporting, and we've got a clear commitment that in future quarterly updates we attach a dashboard that talks about the impact and the progress made, so it'll be much more tangible. And obviously you'll see from that revised improvement plan, it's much more outcomes focused, and we'll report on the outcomes. What difference does it make, rather than what activity are we engaged in?
Thank you. I'll move on then to Councillor Fagan.
Thank you, Leader. The Green Group, we note the contents of this report, and also look forward to actually being able to sort of ascertain whether the things are improving for children and families in the county. We can see that a lot of work is happening, and acknowledge fully that this is a really difficult area to make improvement. A lot of work's going into it. Now we look forward to actually seeing the sort of fruits of some of that work. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Councillor Ginman.
Yes, thank you, Leader. On behalf of the Independents for Herefordshire, I feel this is an interim report. I had the benefit this morning of attending and hearing some further work that has been done. And I think paragraph 19 is probably the one that expresses it within this, the clear governance reporting framework that's now been developed. It will take time to work through, but I was most heartened by what I heard this morning. And I appreciate this is a particular task that is going to take time. It is important that we get the interim comments on it, a commentary on it, so that we can see it is moving in the right direction. And I think we should all convey our thoughts and best wishes to all the staff who are working in this very difficult area. And I'd like to just make that point yet again. This is a difficult area. Thank you to those social workers on the front line and who are having to see considerable change, and I appreciate that's not always easy, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jimman. Councillor Howes, your arrival was very timely. We haven't had a lot of debate on this item, but if you're able to provide any comments on behalf of the Scrutiny Committee.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. My apologies for not being able to join earlier, so I missed the debate. Yeah, we did obviously have the improvement report submitted to scrutiny on Tuesday. So I'd just like to endorse the last comment, really, that, yeah, there are obviously lots of difficulties still, but it's clear progress is being made. And I think in particular, our emphasis on more bottom-up analysis of what actually is the experience of the children and their families of experiencing the service. And also we looked at the workforce issues. So it was the first time that we had a workforce report submitted to scrutiny. So it's the first time we looked at that and we picked out a few issues from that. But it's all part of making sure we understand issues about workforce and people who are obviously experiencing the service, like I said, and that we're getting more insight into that, which I think we are. So from our point of view, it was progress that was clearly demonstrated being made in implementing the improvement plan. And we're going to look at workforce again in future. Now we've had our first look at some of the issues. I think that's all I can really say in summary at the moment. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Howes. I think we look forward to the next report in 3 months' time, which will be about 12 months after we had the Wire report. So hopefully see some progress.
Thank you. May I just actually add, I think supporting what a couple of people said already, and we had 4 reports presented to the meeting. And it was clear a lot of work had been done by officers into producing 4 quite detailed reports for us to read and to absorb. I really would like to endorse what people said about thanking the officers for the hard work they're doing, and in particular reflecting the way we want to look at things and do scrutiny in future. So important to put that on record. A lot of hard work went into it and some excellent detail in the reports for us to get to grips with.
Thank you, Councillor Howes. I think then, unless anybody has any other comments, I'll move the recommendation to Cabinet members, which is that Cabinet members, having reviewed progress against the Children's and Families Strategic Improvement Plan version 1, following the 18th of May 2021 DfE non-statutory notice to improve, have not identified any additional actions to support delivery of improvements. All those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. Moving on. So item 8 was going to be the Market Town investment plans. This has been deferred to the 24th of March meeting. So I'll now proceed to the next item on the agenda, which is item 9, Main Lords, Orchard, Library and Learning Resource Centre. So the purpose of this item is to approve the expenditure required to instruct the technical project manager and design team to complete the detailed design stage and works required to develop a full business case of the Main Lord Orchard, Library and Learning Resource Centre project, including seeking planning and all related regulatory approvals. This item begins on page 277 of the agenda pack. The accompanying feasibility study is in supplement 1. Councillor Davies is unfortunately not available to come this afternoon, so Councillor Chowns is going to speak to this item.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, colleagues. And we're joined by Roger Allenby, who will be able to answer detailed technical questions on this if anyone has any. So the purpose of this report and also the next agenda item are to enable us to move on to the next stages of commissioning these two projects. The redevelopment of Maylords and the creation of a learning centre, a new library there, and under the next agenda item, the revamping of the museum. Both are really exciting projects that will kind of make their cornerstone projects within the broader Stronger Towns portfolio of projects. And I think, you know, we've had discussion about some of these projects before, and they've obviously been included in our capital budget that was discussed at full council a couple of weeks ago. So the purpose of these two reports is to approve moving on to the next stage with these, commissioning the detailed technical work that has to be done. So background work has been done, kind of scoping out the feasibility of these projects, and indeed kind of looking at some really exciting models for the sorts of things that we could do. If you look at the feasibility study for the library, for example, it looks at models like the Hive in Worcester and Story House in Chester. We're not going to be able to do something quite as big on such a scale, but we can definitely do something really exciting within Maylords that will kind of fulfill that vision of bringing additional life and additional footfall to that corner of the city, and broadening the range of activities that are on offer there, as well as enabling us to kind of revamp and update our library. And libraries are still such important institutions within our communities and spaces for all sorts of aspects of learning and creativity, again, as I set out in the papers here. So I hope you all feel as excited as I do and as Councillor Davies does about both of these projects, and I commend the report to you all. Happy to take questions or pass them on to Roger if they're technical.
Any questions? I note that Councillor Stark has asked, in developing the project, we consider how the respective services can also be enhanced and benefits also realised in the market towns. I don't know whether that's specifically dealt with in the report, or whether anybody would like to comment on that.
I can comment briefly on that, Leader. I mean, certainly in the development of the broad Stronger Towns vision, we've been very, very conscious that Hereford is our county city, is really important for everybody in the county as a whole. It's a kind of a hub that needs to connect to the wider hinterland, the whole of the county. So services like, for example, the revamped museum and Maylords Orchards will absolutely be designed to provide services more broadly. And with the market towns, obviously, unfortunately, we've been unable to consider the market towns documents today, but they will come to the next cabinet meeting, and many of the same people have been involved in developing the proposals within the city and within the border market towns as well. I think that connection is really important, but absolutely recognise and support Councillor Stark's comments about making sure that whenever we're doing developments within the city, we consider actively how we can use that as a platform and springboard for developing the connections with the whole county as well, market towns and the rural areas. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, Leader. I mean, I've welcomed this work coming forward. I think the projects that the council is leading on in the Stronger Towns programme will be of huge benefit to the city and are in and of themselves exciting. I think I'd just like to express a tiny bit of frustration in terms of the process generally for Stronger Towns. The Hereford Stronger Towns bid is unusual in that it has as many small and community groups involved with it as it has, and I think that's fantastic, and it's a testament to the strong work that's been done with community groups to encourage them to bring forward projects and to participate. But the process itself, as you can see by the numbers that we're talking about here in terms of the amount of investment that's being required by government to be made up front before funding is assured and secured for the overall programme, really is a massive hurdle and a barrier to community groups engaging with the Stronger Towns process. And if the whole levelling up agenda is going to be using the Stronger Towns initiative from the ministry as an example of the kind of levelling up projects which are going to come out of government to improve, to address inequalities and to across the regions, then these sorts of barriers in the way that the funding is released and the demands that are placed on bidders to fund work at their own expense before any secure income is achieved really do have to be thought about. And I hope that that ministers and civil servants are listening and thinking about this, because it really is going to make it difficult for the kind of communities, groups and organisations that really should be part of benefiting from the levelling up agenda, actually engaging with it. If they've got to provide £450,000 like we're having to do here, in order to take the project to a point where it meets the criteria that government set out.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I'll move on, I think, to questions. So starting off again with Councillor James.
Thank you, Leader. I'm having difficulty with the IT at the moment, coming in and out. Yes, I welcome what could and hopefully will be an exciting project, but I also share Councillor Stark's concern about the unequal capital expenditure throughout the county over many years. We've seen substantial investment in the city and the immediate surrounds, but the level of investment, capital-wise, in the market towns is very small compared with, possibly the exception of Leominster, is very small compared with Hereford. And I hope that in the coming years that problem will be addressed.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Lester.
Well, thank you. Just to say, good luck with the project if it all goes well. I know Councillor Harvey's point, but ministers and civil servants have to make sure that they're not giving monies out to projects that will fail, and that communities have to have a certain stake in these projects to begin with to make sure that they will best spend government money. And I would just simply add to that it's a blessing that the money is there. So it's a good thing that there is a project that puts forward Stronger Towns Fund.
Councillor Lester. Councillor Fagan.
Thank you. Yes, the Green Group obviously welcomes this and looks forward to how we move forward on this project, which is going to be key to Hereford. And just to reiterate Councillor Harvey's concerns, that actually we do need to make sure that we build capacity within the county for community groups to be supported in these sorts of bids. Thank you.
Councillor Chinman.
Yes, on behalf of Independence for Herefordshire, I'm very happy to see this project going forward. I do note Councillor Harvey's comments and I have a sympathy with those. I think that noting Councillor Lester's comment just now, it is a case, of course, that instead of being given the money up front, we're now given it in little bits, which you have to keep drawing down and proving evidence for, which is why it sort of becomes a bit of a slower process. So one has to work with the system as it is. And I think it's a good example here, and it needs explaining, I think, sometimes to our residents, this idea that there's match funding. We have to do something in the first place to spend some money to draw down the rest. But yeah, I look forward to seeing this carried on, carried through, completed, and it's an important project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll put this recommendation to the Cabinet. There are 3 paragraphs. I won't actually read them on this occasion. They are with the papers. in essence, is approving £450,000 worth of expenditure. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Passing on then to item 10, which is in many ways quite similar. This is the Hereford Museum and Art Gallery detailed design. And this is to approve up to £1.5 million worth of expenditure required to instruct the technical project manager and design team to complete the detailed design stage of the project and any related work required to support the development of the full business case, including seeking planning and all related regulatory approvals such as listed building consent. This item begins on page 285 of the agenda pack, and the accompanying feasibility study is in supplement 1, with lots of pictures and drawings and the rest. Again, Councillor Chowns, I think you've agreed to present this on behalf of Councillor Davies.
That's right, yes, and I'll be brief because essentially the same applies as for the previous agenda item. Again, you know, it is worth stating that the reason that we're looking at two major projects, capital projects in Hereford City, is because central government has given us money specifically for Hereford City, which is why we are looking at other mechanisms to support stuff in the market towns and rural areas. This particular project, we're looking at combining funding from the Stronger Towns initiative, also from the Heritage Lottery Fund and our own funding mechanisms too, to create a world-class Marches experience, you know, a fantastic redevelopment of the museum, very exciting when you look at the drawings and the plans. And also personally, I'm particularly excited that it looks like we will be able to do this to NFIT standards, so we'll be able to model how to, you know, revamp a major heritage building to very high environmental standards as well. Lots of exciting activities that can then kind of operate outside of, you know, from the base of that building in terms of educational engagement work across the whole county, as well as being fantastic visitor attraction to add to the fantastic range of existing visitor attractions that we've got in Herefordshire that I'd like to warmly invite everybody, all those hordes of people listening, to come and explore within our beautiful county. So the other thing, just to pick up on a point that was raised in the last round of conversations about the work that's required up front on these projects, absolutely, and that's clear from the scale of this particular project. But I think one of the things that we can feel really proud of kind of collectively as a council and as the Stronger Hereford board is the way that we've really used this opportunity to catalyse projects, a really exciting range of projects that have involved a really wide range of community stakeholders and businesses. So we're really trying, that gives us additional work to do to support that wide range of projects, but it means that we're ending up with a really vibrant and very rooted in the community portfolio of projects for Stronger Hereford. But that's a slight diversion because here we're talking specifically about the museum. So same applies as before. I warmly commend to my colleagues approval of this decision to progress to the next stage with the museum project. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I think because such a similar item as the last one, although I've got Councillor Crockett who's put her hand up. Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to make a brief comment, really. I fully support the last two items. We must never underestimate the social value of such projects, especially as we're trying to return to normal and build back better. It was interesting, we had a visit from Prince Charles this week and he went to see our museum. So yeah, let's do a good job and let's get it done as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'll go to Councillor James.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. Just ditto to what I said to the previous item, but also just to add on the top of it, I hope we get on better. Councillor Chowns actually mentioned about the importance of doing something about our heritage buildings within the town. Well, my worry is if we do it at the pace that we're doing the Shire Hall, we won't even see it delivered in the next council. So something needs to be speeded up on a number of projects of this. And it's much simpler at the town hall than this. It's more straightforward. We know what needs to be done, but it's taking an enormous amount of time to do it. So I hope that this will be done in at a considerable different pace to the Shire Hall.
Thank you, Councillor James. I don't know whether the Chief Executive or the new Director in this area, Mr. Cook, would like to say anything.
I think in terms of the timescale for the Town Hall, I think probably Andrew.
Shire Hall, I was referring to.
For the Shire, sorry, my mistake. In terms of the timescale for the Shire Hall, I think Andrew's best placed to advise on the timescales and the intensity of the work that's currently happening, and the importance of getting that report right, so we understand what the issues have been and what we need to put it right.
I'm very happy to pick up on the Shire Hall. It's a lovely, complex building, and credit to the craftsmanship that was put into when it was built 200 years ago, but nothing lasts forever. So there is a programme being worked out of the repairs and renovations that are required for the building. It's a significant job because there's an awful lot of things to repair and renovate. It's on the forward plan, I think, to come back to Cabinet in July for further decisions. One of the things we're looking at the moment is how that building can be repurposed for the next 200 years in terms of it's been used as a public building. There's lots of conversations with courts because they are an integral part of the arrangement at the moment. So it will be coming back to this meeting. The construction phase is anticipated a couple of years, and it is a large, complex building, as we said before, and we want to do it right. In the context of these works last another 200 years, 2 years to it seems pretty fair.
Thank you. I suppose I was thinking more in general terms of Councillor James' comment about everything seems to take absolute ages. You know, I know the Chief Executive knows how anxious we are to get on with things and deliver things. And I just, you know, I'm hoping he can say, yes, you know, we're going to deliver things much more quickly and much more efficiently in the future.
I'm happy to comment, but I'm conscious that Councillor Harvey has been waving.
Yes, I'd really just like to, you know, to sort of amplify what Mr. Lovegrove has said, and to assure both you, Leader, and also Councillor James, that effectively the work that is already underway for the Shire Hall is effectively undertaking the work that is being proposed here in this agenda item for the Museum and Art Gallery. So the Shire Hall work is actually ahead of what we're proposing to do here for the Museum and Art Gallery, and it's actually going up to, I think, REBA 4 designs for putting the construction work in place. So that was an earlier decision that was taken by Cabinet. And although, you know, it's design work that's going on with, you know, expert heritage architects and surveyors, it is actually progressing the work that needs to be done in order to put right the damage that was created by, you know, years and years of neglect and underfunding of the general maintenance and repair work that needed to go on under the last administration to properly look after heritage buildings and listed buildings that are, you know, key to our city centre, you know, sort of cityscape. So it is happening. You just can't see it at the moment, but, you know, past decisions did actually kick all this this work into effect.
And Leader, if I may, in terms of delivery of projects and programmes, I think to be fair, if you take a step back and look at the work which has been done over the last 9 to 12 months, whether it's the completion of the waste strategy and setting out the arrangements for the future delivery of both collections and disposal, is a significant achievement for the council, as is making progress as we have with our wetlands project. You know, a unique and innovative approach, and maybe some will call it pioneering in terms of the work that's been done, and sits alongside the wider work that's currently happening and is accelerating away around phosphates. And then if we look again at the work we're going to do around our local plan and the completion of the local plan and the city centre strategy, you know, those are significant pieces of work which will change the city for the better for many years to come. And later on in today's agenda, we'll be considering the outcome of the climate assembly work and how we move towards embedding all of our work and decisions so that they work towards our net zero targets, both nationally and locally. You know, those are significant achievements. Yes, there's always more we can do, The reality is there's only so much that we can do, and I think we're taking a prioritised approach in dealing with the things which are immediately in front of us and will have a lasting impact as we go forward.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Move on then, Councillor Lester.
Thank you. I'm really sorry that Councillor Davies can't be here, because I just wanted to say to her, you know, that the design for the old library looks fantastic. It looks really impressive. And I know in the past there have been issues with the design of it and making sure conservation are happy and whatnot. So, you know, this is really encouraging to see if this actually takes place. So that will make it really improved. I have one question, but before I do, I can't help but to come back at Councillor Harvey's point about not spending money on the Shire Hall and the Town Hall. Well, the last administration did spend money renovating the Shire Hall so that it had greater facilities, and then did 2 loads of repair work, if I remember rightly. So it's not that we weren't doing anything at all. And there was significant repair work to the Town Hall. And all of this happened in an era when we were being asked to make the greatest savings in local government history. So I think that just needs to be put into context. But the point I would just like to ask, and it's a really important one in terms of if we get the funding, if the council gets the funding to deliver this improvement to the facility, which, as I've said, looks fantastic, it's all about then the running costs. And I think in the report it says that there'll be a nil rate for the business rates. Can we get clarification on that point? Because unless it's a registered charity or something like that, I believe there would be a rating requirement. And if there's improvements to the building, perhaps a greater rating requirement. So if I could put that question perhaps to the 151 officer, Mr. Lovegrove, thank you.
I need to check on the detail of the business case, but as Councillor Lester has made very clear, that for 0 rates, you have to meet the criteria, which is not a charitable exemption, but I'll investigate and provide a written response.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lester. Councillor Fagan.
Yes, thank you. I mean, the Green Group certainly welcomes this project. This is a fantastic project, and to see it progressing to this stage in such sort of difficult and challenging times is really exciting for the heritage and sort of diversity of the county. So yeah, we're fully behind this project and glad to see it at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jimmy.
Yes, indeed, Leader. The Independents for Herefordshire, very happy to see this going forward, see it as a really important part of the development within Hereford and Herefordshire, because this is going to be a major tourist attraction and visitor attraction, and particularly if we do get the Herefordshire hoard and get that there and able to display it. And I sincerely hope we do. That will make a distinct point of visiting, and yes, let's get on with it and get it done and try and get the money for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jimman. I think I'll put this immediate recommendation to the vote. There is a typo, so I'll read the whole item. So the recommendation is that A, that a redevelopment of the Hereford Museum and Art Gallery to create a new high-quality visitor attraction project is approved. B, expenditure of up to £1.5 million of the Hereford Museum and Art Gallery redevelopment capital programme allocation be approved to complete the detailed design stage of the project, including seeking planning permission. And C, the Director for Community and Wellbeing, following consultation with the Deputy Section 151 Officer, consultation with the Cabinet Member commissioning procurement and assets, be authorised to take all operational decisions necessary to complete the detailed design stage and seek planning approval within the £1.5 million approved budget. All those in favour, show. Thank you. Unanimous. So we'll move now to item 11, where myself and Mr. Lovegrove. I'll pass over to Councillor Harvey to chair this part of the meeting.
Thank you, Leader. I'll just give you a moment to skedaddle. Right, we're now at item 11 on the agenda papers, which is to agree the council's registered services nominated individual responsibility is transferred over to Hoople Limited, and this item is at page 293 of the agenda pack. And I'll hand over to Councillor Crockett, Cabinet Member for Health and Adult Wellbeing, to introduce this item. Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. This agenda before us today, as the councillor has just pointed out, 293 to 310, is to look for approval for the formal transfer of registered social care provider services to Hoople Care as part of Hoople Limited, and the transfer of staff under 2P regulations. The services that are involved in the transfer of registration are our Home First Reablement Service, the Hillside Care Facility, and the residential services for learning disabled people at Southbank Close in Hereford and Ridgemore Road in Leominster. Cabinet is therefore asked to agree that the council registered services nominated individual responsibility is transferred over to Hoople Limited and delegated its authority to the Acting Corporate Director for Community Wellbeing to make all operational arrangements necessary for the implementation of the transfer, including those of the staff under the 2P regulations. The transfer of registration will help to implement objectives within Hereford's market position statement, which was from 2020 to 2025. This underlines the council's willingness to consider its role in markets where they cannot meet demand challenges and the needs of individuals. Transferring the services to Hoople Care will ensure consistency in regulated service delivery, with one nominated individual to oversee the care and support the registered service. There are 17 identified expected improvements from the transfer, and these are documented in the report. I won't go through these individually, but I would ask you, Deputy Leader, if we may allow and ask Mr. Smith if he'd like to add anything further to this item on the agenda.
Yes, please. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Deputy Leader, and thank you, Councillor. The details on page 295 do list those advantages that this proposal would achieve. But in summary, the council has a very large independent and third sector market for care services. And as we begin to move towards a mixed economy of providers, the council re-emerges as a provider within this important area, as it was many years ago. The new care facility that is proposed in the next few years would potentially be run by Hoople Care. Hoople Care is in the process of registering as a care provider, and the CQC regulations and registration is days away, I believe. We have met with the staff of these services to notify them of this proposal. So, of course, we didn't wish staff to find out from the press or from cabinet papers. We wanted to give them prior notice, which we've done out of courtesy to those staff members. And I believe strongly that this will take the council and Hoople Care into a robust position to become a care provider of some high quality, which will be an asset to the council and the citizens. And of course, Ridgebourne and Southbank, which were in-sourced from the private sector last year, are already seeing marked improvements in the performance, because the decision to in-source was taken as a result of variable performance previously by the provider and a variable adherence to cost. So that improvement is already becoming evident within the services that have been in-sourced. And I believe that this will build upon that and ensure that Hoople Care has a bright future.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I mean, this I think is a really positive move, both for the council, for the care services market in Herefordshire, and also for Hoople in broadening its service base and entering the care sector Hopefully it's a major step on the way to the council, as you say, re-entering the service provider market in this area, and I think that's a really positive move in the right direction. Really welcome it, both as Deputy Leader and Chair today, but also as the Cabinet Member for Finance. I think this is a strong and positive move, and I think it'll be the first of many, hopefully, that will see the council delivering services again in this important area and playing an important part in the market mix that we have here in the county. Have we got comments or anything from anybody else? Okay, right. Well, in that case, I'll ask group leaders to if they'd like to comment. Councillor James. Have you dropped out? Yes. Okay. Right. Well, he might re-emerge. Councillor Lester, then.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Harvey. Yes, always happy to support. Our group is always happy to support any improvements or alterations that seek to improve the delivery of services. And so we support this and hope all goes well. And we'll be very interested to know how things pan out. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fagan.
Yeah, the Green Group are equally supportive of this, and certainly if it improves the service that residents of Herefordshire get in terms of care delivery, then it's going to be an excellent move forward. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Ginman.
Yes, thank you. Yes, the Independents for Herefordshire, we support this. There are a couple of questions that have arisen that I would just appreciate a comment on. One is whether the Audit and Governance Committee will have oversight of what happens within Hoople with this regard. Just keep an eye on how the process works. And I noted the comment in paragraph 10 here about the lower cost operating model of Hoople Limited. That did raise a little bit of an eyebrow with regard to understanding why that should be a lower cost operating model on the council itself directly. But I would appreciate that somewhere along the way there's a little explanation of why that should be the case.
Mr. Smith, are you able to provide any context for that?
Yes, absolutely. To the first question around the Audit and Governance Committee, Councillor Jim, absolutely. One of the big advantages of creating effectively a quasi outsourced position with a third party provider that the council owns a very large percentage of is that it takes it out of the adult social care operational position. So it creates a commercial relationship with Hoople. So we have the ability to manage that contract in a very similar way that we would were it to be an independent sector provider. So of course, the Hoople care performance and the Hoople overall performance is subject to Audit and Governance Committee, and this will form another work stream that Hoople delivers on behalf of the council. So I'm sure that will be very visible. And of course, quality assurance within adults and community and wellbeing would quality assure Hoople care in the same way that we do with all independent sector providers. In terms of the lower cost base, of course, Hoople care will grow, hopefully. It has a fixed numbers of staff at the moment. And one of the big advantages of having a local authority trading company such as Hoople is that you could require a fixed overhead and span that across more services, because at the moment Hoople delivers a small number of services on behalf of community and wellbeing. This will increase the services that it delivers quite dramatically, but the overheads that are fixed in relation to that will be spread across a wider footprint. So it will reduce the cost base quite dramatically and will be very efficient. And in terms of the staff that are proposed to 2P to Hoople Care, it is absolutely planned that they will, of course, 2P transfer under current terms and conditions as 2P law requires, and will transfer with the same benefits and terms and conditions they have within the council. Some parts of Hoople Care are delivering services with different terms and conditions, and that is part of the Hoople Care and part of the Hoople model that ensures a slightly lower cost base. But on both occasions, the cost base of delivering Hoople Care we believe will be advantageous to some parts of the market that we currently commission with, and that's certainly been the case with the two services in Ridgeborne and Southbank that we transferred in during 2020.
Thank you,
Mr. Smith. I think as far as scrutiny's involvement in overseeing and monitoring what happens, and given that there are going to be changes that are being proposed under the Rethinking Governance initiative as to the structure of scrutiny, it may be that there is that it's appropriate to consider what the spread of responsibility is between audit and governance and the adults scrutiny panel for taking a look at this, and we'll probably need to consider that as part of how we look at undertaking scrutiny under a new structure, should that those proposals get approved by council in due course. So Councillor Swinglehurst, I hope you'll continue to take a keen interest in that, and also members of your committee. With that, the recommendation to Cabinet members for this agenda item is as follows: that Cabinet approves the formal transfer of registered social care provider services to Hoople Care as part of Hoople Limited, and the transfer of council staff employed in the registered services to the employment of Hoople Limited under TUPE regulations, that is approved, and that the authority is delegated to the Acting Corporate Director for Community Wellbeing to make all operational arrangements necessary for the implementation of the transfer, including the transfer of staff under TUPE regulations. So those are the three recommendations. And can I have an indication of hands in the room on that? 4, yes, that's carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Can somebody encourage the leader and Mr. Lovegrove to return to us? We'll just pause a moment. Or scurrying. Welcome back, both. Leader, I'll hand the chairmanship of the meeting back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Thank you. Okay, so we move to item 12, recommendation for Citizens Climate Assembly. This is very definitely Councillor Chowns to consider the recommendations resulting from the Herefordshire Citizens Climate Assembly commissioned by the Council. And this item begins on page 311 of the agenda pack. Councillor Chowns.
Great, thank you very much, Leader, and thank you everybody. And first of all, a really big thank you to everybody who participated in the Herefordshire Citizens Climate Assembly. This was a new departure for Herefordshire to conduct a Citizens Assembly. The feedback that we've had from participants has been really, really strongly positive. And I think it's a kind of an indication of the importance that our administration places on looking always for new ways to engage with new audiences, new residents who haven't perhaps previously participated in consultation mechanisms, and to explore ways of consulting in a really in-depth way. So the 40+ people who participated each contributed 30 hours to participating in the sessions as set out in the report, to really deliberating very carefully over these issues. And essentially the first weekend they heard a range of presentations from a range of expert contributors who were themselves recommended by an independent advisory group. And then in the second weekend, the participants spent a lot of time just discussing together amongst themselves what they thought were the priorities, and the outcome of that process of conversation and deliberation are the recommendations that we see before us in this report today. There's quite a lot of text, but I also particularly recommend looking at the 3 colourful bar charts right at the end of the agenda pack, which really kind of set out clearly under the 3 broad headings that the Assembly focused on. So that's buildings, transport, and food, farming and land use. Those 3 charts at the end set out in a very easy read format the ideas that Assembly members themselves came up with and then independently voted on afterwards. So, you know, it shows that there's a very strong level of agreement among members about the priority of pretty much all of those recommendations, but it also gives us an indication of the ones that they place particular priority on. Now, as an administration and as a council, now we have allocated the New Homes bonus funding for this year to the Climate Action Reserve, and it's full steam ahead now for the council in taking those recommendations and developing project proposals that respond to those recommendations and take them forward. So what we're doing today is noting and welcoming the recommendations from the Climate Assembly, and the next step is for council officers to work up realistic, implementable projects that can actually respond to those concerns as expressed by a representative sample of the full Herefordshire population. So I think it's a really exciting basis for moving forward to the next level with the work that we're doing in tackling the climate and ecological emergency. There will be a process of lesson learning from the Assembly process itself, and personally I really hope that we can take forward more of these types of exercises where we really engage with a truly representative sample of the population to engage in depth in challenging issues. But for the moment, very, very grateful to everybody who participated in the Climate Assembly process. I think they've come up with some very interesting recommendations, some very ambitious ones, some of them, others, ones that we're already working on, but absolutely scope for doing more. So this is the first step today in welcoming these and noting these recommendations and making that commitment to take them forward. So as the recommendations of this report say, we've asked officers to come back to us in April with an outline of project proposals, and that will be the next step for us as a cabinet to make decisions on what to take forward in response. So I'll leave it there, and I'm very happy to hear comments and questions. Thank you.
Right, any questions from members on stage? I think I was quite struck by the passion that people have for our farmland and for growing things local. I found that particularly encouraging. Harrington.
Sorry, I was struggling to unmute. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Chowns. This is a very good piece of work, and it's fantastic to see the work and effort that's been put into this. But just for a point of clarity, I mean, these recommendations we'll be considering, won't we? And considering how we react to them and how we take them and what we take forward and what matches in with the work that we're doing, as you say, ourselves, of which an awful lot very, very sort of fortuitously matched. So it's like, in a sense, similar to recommendations of a scrutiny committee. It's a very welcome steer from members of the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tyler.
Yes, Leader, just like to say thank you for everybody that's worked they've done for the Citizen Assembly. It's really, it's amazing amount of work that's happened, and it's, to have these volunteers come forward and put some really good ideas how we can be greener, how we can reduce net carbon zero, and just look at the programs they've even thought about. So it's really exciting times, and let's hope we can support some of these recommendations going forward. Thank you.
Mr. Harvey.
Yes, Leader. I welcome these recommendations, and I'm glad they're going to be carefully considered. I too appreciate the level of work that members of the public who were eventually took part in the assembly actually gave to the task, and it was a considerable commitment from them over several weeks. And they had an awful lot of information that was provided to them, and a lot of discussion, I'm sure, ensued as a result of that. I've been disappointed, I think, by some of the rather ill-informed comments that I have heard about the assembly process, and the assumption that seems to have been made both by some members and also members of the public commenting online and social media, assuming that there was some sort of hand picking of the representatives here. I would encourage members of the council and members of the public to familiarise themselves with the assembly process. It is a particularly rigorous process where, you know, as the report states, over 14,400 invitations were sent to households across Herefordshire who gave a very broad representation of the demography of the county, both in terms of their geographical location, their personal circumstances, and indeed their attitudes to climate change as an issue, whether they believed in it, whether they absolutely didn't believe in it, whether they were uncertain and just felt they didn't have enough information to take a view one way or the other. And to whittle those down to a group of people who gave a really good representation of all spectrums of view on the matter was no mean feat. And I think it was really interesting for me to attend the presentation of the Assembly members of their recommendations, and to see how passionately and enthusiastically they came across in terms of both appreciating the process that they'd been through, recognising that they still didn't all agree on the subjects at the end of it, and the colourful bar charts that we've got at the end of the report demonstrate this. There is a spectrum of view, and that's what I would expect and want to see on something like this. But it is a very rigorous process. The consultants who worked with us in managing the process, I think, did a fantastic job. And all of the experts who gave their time and contributed to both the presentations and got involved in the debate, I'm also very grateful to. I look forward to the review of what it is we feel we can deliver, and I'm really pleased that through the budgeting process we have actually allocated a substantial sum of money to give confidence to those members of the public who were involved, and those more widely who would have liked to have been involved and volunteered and who were part of the whittlings, that we have actually put funding behind this to take forward recommendations and accelerate the pace at which we address climate change. You know, lots of people think, well, why should we bother? The problem's so big. You know, there are lots of parts of the world which are belching out much more, you know, sort of pollution and greenhouse gases than we are. What can we do to make a difference? But every gram of carbon that isn't put up into the atmosphere is a gram that isn't there to contribute to global warming. So I think everybody, each one of us has a part to play, and I'm really keen that Herefordshire as a county and our citizens and our businesses do make the contribution that we can to reducing our collective effect on climate change. And, you know, we only have to look around us at the flooding events that communities are experiencing right now as a consequence of the change in the way that the rainfall pattern occurs in this country at the moment. That, you know, climate change is real. Our farmers are seeing it. They're recognising it in a lack of biodiversity in their fields and with their pollination services that they have to buy in, and we're seeing it, you know, with flooding events and with the changes in the way that you know, our summers come to us, and you know, the effect that it has on our wildlife. So really looking forward to seeing the results of officers' consideration of these recommendations, and I welcome the report and give my thanks to everybody involved, officers here and members of the public, and also Councillor Chowns for championing it on behalf of Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now go to the group leaders. I think Councillor James is no longer with us, in which case I go to Councillor Lester.
Yes, thank you. We note this method of consultation, and we appreciate the you know, when we've had budget consultations, it's been very difficult to engage with members of the public. So any new way of trying to engage with people is something that must be seriously considered. I suppose the challenge that we would have is to, well, first of all, we would like to thank all of those people who gave their time to engage in this process, and however they were selected, you know, giving 30 hours of their time to put forward the issues and concerns that they're really passionate about is, you know, we're grateful for that. I think, though, the general point we would make is that, you know, the whole exercise cost £70,000, and the challenge there, therefore, is this, you know, the cost of it good value for money. And I say that in the context of, I must remind the Cabinet that in January 2021, the Scrutiny Committee met to discuss the recommendations of the Climate Change Panel that was chaired by Councillor Wilding. And they spent a very long time putting forward lots of recommendations. And obviously it was their time and energies that were put into that, but over a considerable period of time. And they came up with 53 recommendations, but it wasn't, maybe that was a recommendation per councillor, I don't know, that may be coincidence, but there were more recommendations in actual fact, because some of those recommendations had subsets, and there was a whole host of recommendations put forward as part of the councillors and their duties to come up with some really good ideas about tackling the challenges that we find with managing the environment. So there was that, and also, of course, there's the process of the parish summits, where you've got thousands, over 1,000 parish councillors who give their time and energies completely for free to concern themselves with matters that affect their locality and the county as a whole. And, you know, when you see it in that context, plenty of people there willing to engage. And, you know, the question has to be asked, that wouldn't have, those engagements would and did not cost £70,000. But the point about the recommendations, I know that this administration are going to go away, look at these recommendations, see what are feasible, see what are not feasible, and that will take some time, thought, and energy, and we appreciate that. But there's a couple of salient points that I would just comment on. Whoever thought of the priority EE in the pack about biofuels, that really is a very good way, I think, that we could use our energies efficiently. And so I commend that. I think that's really a great way of thinking outside the box, as it were, to address some of the challenges we have with energy. But there are other points which I think should and could be challenged. And two of those are around this idea that a passive house is wholly the solution and other types of housing is not. And there's a huge viability issue there. And, you know, the Cabinet have been contacted by the construction industry lobby, and I hope they take the contents of that letter very seriously, because it's a well thought out letter which highlights the fact that just because something is not passive house, it doesn't mean to say that it can in many ways address our energy and environmental concerns. And the same goes for using local products as opposed to other products elsewhere, which might even be more sustainable. But it's not as perhaps simplistic as the recommendations might want to point out. And the last piece I would make, I think it's a typo in policy GG. It says care dependency, and I mean we don't want to reduce that. We want to give good care, but I think it's saying car dependency, and this idea that planning can mandate to avoid the use of the car for businesses and houses in a rural area like Herefordshire. That is just not really appreciating the challenges that people have when it comes to their lifestyles, how they get to their jobs, how they live in their communities, and how they sustain their own communities by making sure that they can access services and live their lives. And, you know, we have to be optimistic in that cars will become less burdensome to the environment. They will become easier to make and have less of a commitment to, you know, require less resources. And so we have to be optimistic about that. But we cannot in a rural area throw the car away, because it's just not feasible and just not practical, and it would potentially threaten communities in all kinds of ways, which I'm sure you all know. So that's just the reaction from us. But obviously the Cabinet have got to go away and look at these recommendations and come back with their ways of recommending how to spend that money. But I would just make a plea on behalf of the Scrutiny Committee. Please don't forget, and please refer back to that document that was produced in January to you all, which you all read and appreciated, but please refer back to that with your deliberations as well. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sure we'll do that.
Leader.
I don't know. Cass Chan, do you want to respond to some of those points?
Yes, if I may just respond briefly to a few of those points. Regarding the scrutiny recommendations, thank you, Councillor Lester. In fact, I read and responded to 3 iterations of the scrutiny recommendations, and action has been taken on a very large number of them. So it's a little misleading to suggest that that's been put on a shelf and not addressed. That has been very actively addressed over a period. And indeed, there is now a follow-up panel. And in fact, I initiated a meeting with them not so long ago to brief them on things, including the Climate Assembly and everything else that we're doing on this agenda. And I look forward to the establishment, if rethinking governance proposals are taken forward, of a committee that will look in even more depth at these issues. I just remind Councillor Lester that he, along with every member of the council, voted unanimously to establish the Citizens' Climate Assembly in July 2019. So it's a little surprising to hear kind of criticism of us having done that, and querying about the cost and so forth. You know, what has been done with the Citizens' Assembly is really very different from the existing consultation mechanisms. And indeed, General Scrutiny's last meeting before the budget meeting critiqued the lack of engagement in the standard modes of consultation that have historically been used. So I think what's really important about this process is that it did establish a representative sample of the county's population, including voices that aren't normally heard. And I'm really glad that there was unanimous support for that back in 2019, and I would hope that there would be unanimous support for the fact that we've done it. With regard to specific recommendations, I think it's a little unfortunate to use this opportunity to critique individual recommendations from the Assembly members. You know, we have explained that what the council will now do is take those recommendations and work out what can be done to respond to them. So I don't personally feel it's very appropriate here to pick on particular ones. The passive house one that Councillor Lester mentioned actually says in the wording of the recommendations from the members, passive house plus or equivalent. So I don't think that they are kind of choosing one particular branding. They're expressing a view about wanting to see really high standards for buildings going forward, which I hope is something that we can all agree with. And indeed, we're already working on that. We've got a draft consultation paper coming forward soon for a supplementary planning document on environmental building standards. So there will be a really comprehensive opportunity for all stakeholders to engage in the debate on the specifics of what that should look like going forward. I think, you know, hopefully we can sort of unite in this meeting around welcoming the fact that this consultation has taken place, this assembly has taken place, and the very constructive and positive recommendations that have come out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chance. I'll move on then to Councillor Fagan.
Thank you, Leader. On behalf of the Greens, yeah, I mean, what is not to like? It's, you know, this is a fantastic endorsement of the call that we had to hold a climate assembly to look at the issues of climate change and ecological breakdown. You know, throughout the world, these are issues that are sort of top at the list of concerns that people have, and that certainly is so in the county as well. So I think this is an example of an excellent new approach to consultation. We've already heard how consultation is very difficult in the county. And so to engage people in this way is a fantastic opportunity. As far as I understand, and from initial discussions that were held around how we hold a climate assembly, the costs come out of consultation budgets, which are existing budgets. So again, having such a successful consultation is great. And as a member of the Climate Emergency Task and Finish group, which spent a lot of time, almost a year, looking at the different issues involved, to see these issues coming up and recommendations coming from a group of residents who've again spent a lot of time in this just shows it gives us a clear way forward and how we need to act and how we need to address these issues in Herefordshire. So I look really forward to us actually getting some action now and making certainly transport safer and more inclusive throughout the county and much more sustainable, and extend thanks to all of those people who put so much time into coming up with such a detailed list of recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fagan. And finally, Councillor Ginman.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm sure the independents for Herefordshire will be very happy to see what has happened. This has been a very interesting exercise, and I think we've all learned. I think it's important that it's not just Cabinet that goes away and looks at this. And I noticed Councillor Lesser sort of said, well, Cabinet will go away and look at what's this. I think all councillors should be going away and looking at what the outcome was, because this is an independent bunch of people picked through a process to ensure they were independent. And I don't mean that independent in the sense of the group on the council, but independent in thinking in any way. They had some fantastic people come and lecture to them, and experts in their field. And they came up with a set of proposals, suggestions, recommendations. It's absolutely right and proper that this now gets taken away by all of us and looked at in that way, because this has been an alternative way of getting informed opinion. And I think that is a very important part of how we interact with those who live, derive their income, and intend to reside in this county for years to come. There's lessons in this we need to think about, look at, and we certainly can't afford to do all of the things, but that doesn't mean to say we can't make the first step on the journey that is going to be required for many of these ideas. So I look forward to seeing what comes forward once this has been scrutinized, once these ideas have been looked at properly, and I'm sure that there will be plenty of discussion to follow on the back of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jimman. So I'll put the recommendation to the Cabinet, which is first that A, the Cabinet receive and note with thanks the recommendations provided by the Citizens Climate Assembly. B, delegate responsibility to Corporate Director Economy and Environment and the Section 151 Officer in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Economy and Environment to allocate funding from the Climate Reserve to consider next steps and provide recommendations to Cabinet by April 2022. And C, provide a progress report to the Citizens Climate Assembly in September 2022. So all those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimously passed. So thank you for your time this afternoon. I'll bring the meeting to a close. Thank you to everyone for attending. The next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, the 24th of March. Please can I have confirmation that the live stream has stopped?
That's the cat knocking something over. It's not the live